Chroma keying is a huge part of the post-production world. When you chroma key a shot, you replace a subject's background with a different background. The background you replace is typically a bright shade of green or blue, and the color replacement is achieved by positioning the subject in front of a well-lit screen, cloth, or painted wall. And of course, that's why this process is also called green screen or blue screen technology. We're just going to be scratching the surface of this workflow here, but if you want to learn more about it, there are some great courses available on lynda.com to teach you the whole workflow. I'd specifically recommend green screen techniques for video and photography. So let's take a look at a couple of these interview shots here. We have Rebecca, and she was shot in close-up and in medium shot in front of this green cloth. And then here I have some images of the background. Here is a close-up of a window, and I have the medium shot right here. So if we couldn't interview Rebecca at her home like we wanted, all we would need would be the image of what we wanted to use for her background. And then we could interview her anywhere we like as long as we have our green screen. All right, so let's set this up. I'm going to come to my first clip here, and I need to move this clip of Rebecca's interview up a level, okay? Because we need the background to go below it. And this is the close-up, so let's get the close-up in here, and we'll mark an in and an out. And we've got video to video, so I'll go ahead and just overwrite this in by pressing period. Okay, and now we have our background behind our interview subject. So what I'm going to do is apply the chroma key effect, and in Premiere Pro, it's called the Ultra key. So I'm going to come over to Effects, and I'm just going to type in Ultra. There's the Ultra key, and I'll apply that to the clip on V2. So I'll select that and then come up to Effect Controls, and we can see that Ultra key has been applied, but it isn't doing anything yet, and that's because I haven't told Premiere what color to remove. And you do that over here with Key Color. So I'll click on my little eyedropper here, and then come and sample the green background. And as soon as you do that, there you go. We can see through to the background layer underneath. All right, we're looking at V1 now. But it's not as clean as it could be. I'm going to come over to Output and change from Composite to Alpha Channel. And we can see a little bit more about what's going on here. Anything that's white is counted as the foreground, and anything that's black is counted as the background, and that's what it's going to key out. If there's any gray, that represents a translucent area that is going to partly key out the green, but not cleanly. So the goal here is to adjust the parameters until you've achieved a clean black and a clean white with no gray. So let's just take a look at a few basic parameter adjustments so that we can fix this as best as possible without getting too technical. The first one I'm going to take a look at is setting. Okay, right now it's on default, but it also has relaxed, aggressive, and custom. These are base settings that can help you get a head start on where you need to be, and then you can tweak from there. So if you need less of the key color removed, like if you have grays in your foreground that you need to eliminate, then you can choose relaxed and everything will back off a bit. Or if you need to remove more of the key color, then you can go with aggressive and it will bump everything up to really try to eliminate any grays in your background. And of course, custom allows us to go in and manipulate a lot of sliders until it's perfect. So let's go ahead with aggressive because we have a little bit more to get rid of in the background over here. Okay, and as you can see, it's really a lot cleaner now. In fact, there isn't too much more in terms of defining our matte, but the basic workflow from here is to start with matte generation parameters, and this is where you focus on getting your crisp whites and crisp blacks. Then you come down to matte cleanup, and this is all about the edge between the black and the white. You want to make sure that you don't have any anti-alias edges, which are kind of that stair-step pattern, or wispiness, or anything like that. You want to try to get it as clean as possible, and that's what this category is for. And then finally, you have spill suppression, and that is to remove any green from the foreground subject. And you might think, green? Why would Rebecca be green? And that's because certain parts of her body, like her hair and her clothes, might be reflecting the background. I'm going to come from Alpha Channel to Composite so we can take a look at this. And let's go to 100%. And you can see that the edges of her hair are a little bit green here. Okay, so we'll fix that with spill suppression. All right, let's go back out to fit. And as I said, I was pretty happy with my actual matte generation. I don't think I'm going to mess with any of those parameters here. I am going to climb into matte cleanup just a little bit to clean up some of my edges here. And I'm just going to bump up the choke a tiny bit and bump up my softness a tiny bit. okay? And that'll help out a lot. Then I'll switch back to composite. And again, we have our little bit of green on her hair. I'm going to go into spill suppression. I'm going to bump up the range a little bit and the spill. You don't want to go too much on this or the entire image is going to get too pink, okay? But I think we've done a good job here. If you take a look full screen, I'll select it and press tilde. It looks like we've gotten rid of most of that green, and I'll play.
I think Homestretch particularly matches the dogs to the families.
And one thing that I did forget to do, which I would definitely recommend, is to switch to full resolution on playback so that we can really see this at its best. This is already a highly compressed image because I had to fit it within the lynda.com exercise files, so we really want to make it look its best, especially when we're keying.
And I think Homestretch really takes the time.
All right, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's come down to the medium shot now and perform the same workflow. I've already positioned the interview clip on V2 and the background is on V1. So let's just apply the Ultra Key effect. And then we'll come in and select the key color. And then I'll go to Alpha Channel. And this one needs a lot more help. So let's change to aggressive. And that helped, but we still need a little more help down here in the lower right. And we need to clean up the foreground as well. So this time I will go into matte generation. And I'll bring up my pedestal a little bit, and that should help my background here. And you can see that gray disappear. Now it did somewhat worsen this part right here. So I'm going to come in with transparency. And you can see what happens if I go to the right. So I'm going to back off and go to the left. And as soon as I get rid of those gray areas, I'm going to stop. All right, so I've got my clean black and my clean white. I'm going to twirl up matte generation. And then I'm going to come into matte cleanup. And again, matte cleanup is all about my edges. So I'm just going to slightly increase the choke and soften it a little bit. And now let's go back to the composite. And I'll play this.
To the families. And I think
I'm going to go full screen, so I'll select the program monitor. And we definitely have some green along her hair. So let's climb into spill suppression. And I'm going to bump up the range and the spill. And I should be good here.
really takes the time to get to know each.
All right, not bad, and it matches pretty well with the close-up. Okay, so that's a very brief glimpse into the world of chroma keying. The Ultra Keyer usually does a pretty nice job of producing some nice clean keys. And again, I do encourage you to watch Green Screen Techniques for Video and Photography to learn all the ins and outs of this very cool process.